And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on Deborah Kobylt Live. And look who's joining us today. I'm so thrilled. I'm so honored to have one of the finest journalists that I think in all of Los Angeles and perhaps around the country, Elex Michaelson, who did his final show on Fox 11 this past weekend. And of course, The Issue Is such a magnificent show. Elex has won 8 Emmys, 8 golden mics. And right before we went on the air, I said, now how many? He goes, 8, I think. 6 LA Press Club Awards and then some. You have had such an incredible career, and you started at such a young age, I believe at the age of 21 down in San Diego, which was quite remarkable. I didn't realize you were that young, but your story is incredible because you are truly a unique talent. And by that, I mean, everyone can leave after an interview with you, and instead of fighting, they're shaking a hand, and I'm talking both sides of the political arena, and everybody feels like they got a fair shake, and that's kind of rare these days. So, Elex, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. I clearly am an addict to this sort of thing. On my first day off, the first morning, I'm back doing something in broadcasting.
I know. It's actually very funny. So I'm actually really honored because, I've been wanting to have you on the show for quite some time. And I'm like, gosh, do I even go ask the guy now? He's just about to leave. And John's like, he'll say yes. This is what he loves. And thank you. I'm truly very honored. But gosh, how did it feel signing off on Fox 11 on Friday from The Issue Is and your final newscast at 10?
It was emotional. It was surreal. I mean, I think so many things were happening that day. I was getting pulled in so many different directions, and there were so many messages incoming and so many just sort of logistical things to do that I don't think I really got a chance to just sort of sit back and soak it all in, which I think was actually better. Felt a little bit more like pulling the Band-Aid off and like, okay, we got to go. And then they were very nice. They had a party for me nearby at a bar with a lot of the Fox 11 people. And so like I couldn't be late to that. The party was for me. So like usually I'm there late on Friday nights working. I go in most Saturdays and I'm working, and I didn't get a chance to do that because I was going to lose access to the building. So it was like slam into the very last second to get all this stuff done that I usually would do on the weekend. And it was like away we got. I mean, literally sprinting to the finish. I was sprinting back and forth in the newsroom to different places, to my car, throwing boxes in, and made my way to the end. But that was kind of fitting because that's how my kind of whole time there was.
Yeah. I mean, and that's just how it goes, folks. When it's your last day, it's your last day. That little key card just won't work anymore. So you're right. In fact, the next morning, there were the promos from your final show. And I'm thinking to myself, that guy worked all night. He cut these all night, didn't you?
Posting online? Yeah. I mean, I slept for a few hours and then I was up because it was like, this is, that world, the social media world, I like to call it surfing the wave. You either catch the wave or you don't. You know
Yeah.
what I
No, it's
mean?
very true.
And,
It's
and so if you hit it in the right moment, a lot of people see it and a lot of people interact with it. But if you're a little too late or a little too early, you kind of get wiped out. And so in that scenario, I mean, it was hard. It was like I didn't really feel like doing it, but it was like, get it up there. This is when people are interested in this. And it did exceptionally well. I was amazed at the amount of traction it got online and people sending in comments. I mean, it was thousands of comments,
oh,
and it was really something.
you will have people following you to your next gig, which maybe you'll even tell us at the end of the show. We'll just have to keep people watching.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that, though, where you go next. And like I said, think about it. Maybe in the next hour you can reveal. So we'll talk about that at the end of the show. But you've had an incredible career. You started
Thank
very
you.
young. We're going to go talk about that. But gosh, you've interviewed presidents, from Trump to Biden, vice presidents, governors. You've worked out with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you really do manage to go both sides, and everyone at the end of it is feeling happy. Like that time when you were at a press conference with then President Trump the first time, and he showed up, I believe, at the Woolsey fire.
Hmm.
And you never really know what you're going to get with him, right? And you asked a question, and it ended up with him offering his hand to Governor Newsom. And I thought that was quite a moment that you set up, knowingly or unknowingly. But that's just sort of the way your career has gone.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
That was a crazy day. That was one of the craziest days of my career, that particular day at the Woolsey fire.
How so?
Well, there was a lot of different elements of that. So first off, I was asked to be part of the presidential pool and presidential motorcade, which is kind of amazing. So you go, we went to where Air Force One was landing. I think that was landing out in Ventura County. And then you get the president coming down the stairs, and then you have to run to get to your press van because when the president leaves, everybody leaves, and you could be left there. So we sprint. Literally, the car is moving, and I'm throwing the tripod in and jumping in like an action movie. And then we go down and we drive past Zuma Beach, which was my home beach where I grew up going to as a kid, 3 or 4 times a week, and where I used to go with the beach bus. And I'm there literally in the presidential motorcade going by my old lifeguard station and through my hometown. And then we end up at this spot, which I later learned from Martin Sheen was his front yard. So
I know where that is, up on Point Doom, right?
Point Doom, yeah.
Yeah, I know where that is.
It's the fake president's house with the real president. and then it's Jerry Brown, who's this iconic figure, 4-term governor, who's on his way out. Gavin Newsom, who's first time meeting Donald Trump, and it's sort of this new thing, who had just been elected, like a week before, who I'd covered extensively, and Donald Trump. And it's the three of them together. And so I'm the pool reporter. I'm the only local TV broadcaster there. And Sarah Sanders had said to us, yeah, guys, no questions. We're not going to be doing any questions. And so we're being told to move here. And then Donald Trump says, come on over. Totally a reminder that he didn't really listen to anybody and just did what he wanted. And so then I'm there in the middle of this, and there's like a national reporter for the CNN. I think there's somebody from the New York Times, but it was a very small pool. And I decided, this is my moment. Yeah. So I just start asking questions. And I think in the press conference, there were 8 questions, and I asked 6 of them. So
that's incredible. Yeah. Well, look, he liked you. You let him, you made sure he looked good, right?
Yeah, So on the way out, Trump pats me on the back and says, good job. That was good. He was impressed at the chutzpah, to take over that moment. And then he asked apparently Sarah Sanders and other people, who is that guy? And then every other time after that he came to California, he requested me to be part of the pool. And so we had this. And then later that day, we went back and I got to talk to him again. And then I'm there with Newsom and Brown. And this is this crazy experience for both of them. And it was just wild on so many levels. And it's also so cool to be part of that motorcade where you're just flying and they shut down the roads and you got the CHP officers on both sides of you flying. And, it also gave me an understanding that all these protesters spend all this time and on their signs and they, getting out there and everything. They think they're going to have an impact. And you literally are whizzing so fast that you can't even read what the signs say. It's everybody's out there with their event, see it for a quarter of a second, and they're bulletproof glass. You can't even hear them. And you realize how insulated that world really, really is.
Oh, isn't that interesting? I never would have thought of that. That's an interesting perspective you just gave us, honestly. And when you talked about Donald Trump and he requested you, if you don't mind, I'm going to go back a little bit in my very early career because I had covered, which is where I met my husband, John, in Atlantic City, New Jersey. I was really a very young reporter, right out of school, fresh out of school, Atlantic City. And this is during his bankruptcy days, right? And I remember I asked him that the courts gave him $450,000 allowance to live on through his bankruptcies. And, all the network guys were there from New York and I'm little old me from Atlantic City. And I'm like, hey, how are you going to live on $450,000 a year? Boy, if he didn't love that question, he just pivoted and he's like, who said that? I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I'm toast. I have to look for a new job. I gave him my name, Deborah Zara. And he goes, move over. That's the best question I got all day. Because he likes something where you can really put him in the spotlight as opposed to how do you feel? What are you doing? Right. So after that, he would always request me when he would be coming down to Atlantic City. And boy, because I heard you say once that he really knows how to work the media. And he did then too. He would be coming down the escalator and there I am this little reporter at the time, and with my cameraman, and he's coming down. He goes, "You want to get some B-roll?" And I'm thinking, wow, this guy knows what he's doing. It's very interesting to watch how he works.
Right.
But you clearly had an impact on him. You've had an impact on so many, Elex. It's incredible. I need to dial it back, though. Your first broadcast with your sister at home. Let's talk about that. You were just a kid. You were just a kid.
Yes, that's true. So my sister and I used to do a sort of fake talk show called Talk with Elex and Danielle that we would record. We would interview our friends and pretend that they were celebrities. When my friends weren't available, we'd interview the dog.
Always a good interview.
We had musical performances that we would karaoke. We did, sometimes we would do like, a split show where one of us was on the road and we're in the backyard, sort of do it like that. It was sort of modeled on like Live with Regis and Kathy Lee, the idea of like, a host chat at the beginning, and then we'd have guests. And then when I would go on vacations with my family, I would always bring my little camcorder and I would, make shows, travel shows, and talk to people on the road and put pieces together, from the time I was really young.
Yeah. And so you really clearly knew what you wanted to do. I mean, when you have the passion you do now, that does come from somewhere. And as parents, right, it's our job to sort of look and see that. And clearly you had that and you followed that passion. I know you initially thought at one time to go to UCLA, and you ended up at the journalism department at USC, correct?
Yes, that's true. I grew up in Agora Hills, and in Agora, it was very much a UCLA school. It was UCLA colors. Our theme song was literally the UCLA theme song. Most of my teachers were UCLA grads. Most of my friends' parents were UCLA grads. Our basketball uniform was based off of the UCLA logo. I would go with my friends and their parents to UCLA basketball games and UCLA football games. I'd never really even been to USC. I went my senior year, I went on a tour there. I remember parking in the parking lot, literally hearing dun da 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 da, and like the band was practicing, happened to be practicing right underneath the parking lot. So it was like when I walk on, I literally have the theme song going, and had this magical experience. And I was interested in journalism, and USC had this great journalism program, and they said that the max amount of kids in a class was 12. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And they had the 24-hour campus TV station, and they had political shows, they had newscasts, they had all these things. And then the very next day, I went to UCLA on a tour where they had no journalism program, no campus TV show. And they said for most classes, you would be in 400, 500, 600. And sometimes you would have to flow room, not in the actual classroom, and watch the professor on a TV screen. And I was like, oof, that's not quite what I'm looking for. But the thing is, I didn't get into the journalism school at first. I got in as a poli-sci student at USC, and I had to risk it to try to transfer in. And they only allowed 5 transfers out of 150. And I was lucky. I worked really hard and got straight A's my first semester and did all the volunteer work and did everything I could and got in. And then ultimately ended up graduating first in my class from the Annenberg School, even though I had to transfer in.
Does that surprise anybody, though? I mean, you played basketball in high school. I believe you were this, what is it called?
Student body president.
Thank you. Student body president. So it only makes sense that anything that you did, you did it with excellence, right? Because I know you're a guy who really believes in research. And I know that
so do you, clearly, based off of this interview so far.
Yeah, no, I do. I actually love research. I never even wanted to be on TV. I wanted to be a newspaper reporter because I really love research. I read everything about people. I'm up all night too, reading about people. I find it almost the most interesting part of the job because if you don't know somebody's backstory, I don't know. I just feel like it paints a larger picture. But so you did all that. You're at USC, and then I believe what happened after that? I think you landed at Fox 11, but not exactly as an anchor, right?
Well, no, I started as an intern at Fox 11.
That's what I meant. It's like, you're at USC and there you go. You go to Fox 11, but you're an intern.
Well, and that was, I think I did that even before I transferred into the journalism program. So I started as in high school, there was a program called Operation Shadow, where
Yeah.
you got to shadow parents of other students who worked in the field that you were interested in. So I was interested in news. Our career counselor, Mrs. Hawkins, got me connected with Josh Kaplan, whose daughter went to Agora High School, who is the executive producer of Good Day LA, a show that I watched all the time with Steve, Dorothy, and Jillian, and went in there and shadowed him for the day and asked a lot of questions. And there were other students there too, but I was clearly way more serious about it. And he pulled me, away from the group on the way out and said, if you are really interested in this, you should come intern for me. Here's my contact information, and we may have to lie about your age.
Ooh.
And so a year later, when I'm trying to transfer into this school and all the rest of it, I reach out to him, and I didn't initially uh, hear from him. I heard from him back, but then like when it came time to the deadline, I wasn't hearing from him. So I said to my mom, "What if we just show up there and sort of force him to make a decision?" So I went to Fox 11, and they said, I'm here for Josh Kaplan. Like, do you have an appointment? I said, no, we'll wait. I pulled off to the side and sat there near the handicap spot and waited for a couple hours. And Josh came out, and I said, "This is either going to be great or terrible." And he said, "This is hilarious. Good for you. You start on Monday." And so that started my internship journey with Fox 11. And they were down writers at the time. They had just lost their national show. And so I broke all sorts of union rules and learned to be a writer. And
Yeah.
so I was writing 4 or 5 stories a morning, and went out on junkets and put together pieces and did all sorts of stuff there and I was, 17, 18 years old at the time. It was 20 years ago. And
Wow.
then I get into the journalism school, and they have a class called Intro to Writing, where you have to
Oh,
write one so-called VO for a week. You have a week to do it, and I was doing 4 or 5 of them a morning
yeah. I know. It's
professionally.
like, what?
So
Did you
I got
teach the class or
yeah,
no?
so it was the highest score I ever got in a class. I got 125% in the class. And then
Wow.
that professor at Channel 4 and said, "Come intern for me." And so I went, and he paired me up with their political reporter, Conan Nolan, because I was into politics. And they liked their what's called slugs for any election story. They would put ELEX was just the name that they did for all their election stories. And so they thought Elex for Elex. So it was kind of a perfect fit. And then Conan became my main mentor for most of my career, and still is a huge mentor for me. So it's a small world. And Conan set me up to go to Washington, and then and then when I eventually got hired to go to Fox 11 as an anchor, to bring this whole thing full circle, Josh Kaplan, the executive producer that I shadowed, was purposely waiting out front for me.
Oh, I
Uh,
love
so,
that.
so as a way to, come on in as a nice moment, and also small world. Mrs. Hawkins, the career counselor, her son Kirk Hawkins ends up in TV news as well at KTLA and KCAL, and then my other mentor at the time, who was a father of a high school student that I was on the basketball team, named Steve Carlston, years later becomes the general manager at Fox 11, to also bring it. So there's all, you never know who you're going to meet and when they're going to come back into your life. It's such a small world.
Yeah, it is a very small world. And if you just keep up the hustle and you just put in the hard work, people remember it. They really do. Um, I have to tell you, I did something similar when I was trying to get into the business. I didn't know anybody. This is way before 9/11. And I remember I really thought it would be fun to work at Saturday Night Live. And I was in college, and you could just walk right into 30 Rock, which I did. Young girl, nobody was asking me anything. And I just sat there. I literally sat there in the offices. Nobody was there. Somebody walked in, and they're like, "Who are you?" I said, the intern. They said, "Well, where's your badge?" I said, "I don't know. I don't have one." They said, "Well, go down to HR and get one." I'm like, "Well, what's your name?" They're like, "Joe." I said, "Okay, thank you." So I went down to HR, and I'm like, "Joe sent me down here to get my badge." "Oh, okay." So I got my badge. I went up to Saturday Night Live, and I was an intern. It was so much fun.
Um,
But
what
like,
a story.
no,
Yeah.
it's, oh, you can't imagine. So I would stand outside of buildings, also
Yeah.
like on
Yeah.
Columbus Circle. for ABC. I mean, that's just kind of what you did, and if I, yeah.
You'd be allowed to do that now.
It would be, first of all, you can't, right? Because
Right.
there's so many guards. Even if you are
Right.
a young girl in college, they're not letting you up there. But I get it. I get that hustle. I get that you have to do this, and nothing's going to stop you from doing what you want to do, hopefully.
Right.
Also, Dorothy Lucy says hello. She told me that she saw that you were going to be on today. She goes, "Oh my God, he was my intern. He was the best. He was incredible." I said, "Of course he was." So they
It
have,
was great. That's who I was writing most of those stories for. Yeah.
yeah, I'm probably going on the junkets with her as well.
And then her fill-in was named Lauren Sanchez, and I don't know whatever happened to her, but she was did some work for her too.
It's
Yeah.
kind of funny. We all sort of worked together because I would be with Lauren on the field when I was doing like early morning news,
Yeah.
which didn't really suit me. I remember being half comatose and just not being able to even function. There was a burning building somewhere, and I'm thinking, I don't even know where I am. And, we'd all show up together at the same time and even like exchange notes. You know how that goes. While this is a competitive market, it's also a very giving one. Don't you think, Elex?
Oh, Conan Nolan taught me about that early on. He would
Yeah.
always say it's a marathon, not a sprint. And there are some days where you're going to show up first to the scene, and some days you're going to show up last to the scene. And it always seemed like the people had way more in common than their management did, and everybody bonded over bitching about their bosses.
Yeah. Really, that's very
But
funny.
you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, and so, you could be that person. It's like, I got my exclusive, with random fire victim.
Right.
But then when you show up last, the next person's going to box you out. So like say, yeah, there's the fire victim. He's right over there. He's a nice guy. He's talking. And why not?
It is very true. We all worked very well together, and clearly you work very well with everyone in this market. San Diego, that was really your first reporter anchor job. You were 21 years old. How did you do that? Like, I'm surprised people didn't walk in and say, "This can't be." Like, you were actually that good, Elex. You were that good
I was
to
good
be
and I
able to
was
get. Yeah.
lucky. So that was so when Conan Nolan had set me up to go to Washington with his friend Steve Handelsman to work for NBC
Oh,
News Channel.
great guy.
Great guy. And we did I was in the Senate, I was in the White House, I was in the Supreme Court, and I would go out and shoot pieces for somebody to track later on. But I'd say, shoot a stand up and shoot this. And I would work with the editors and put them together myself. And Conan said, send them to me and I'll get them on the weekend show.
Wow.
So my reel was a bunch of NBC Washington shot pieces that aired on NBC Los Angeles. So my reel was not a bunch of college pieces, right? It looked better than most college students.
Yeah.
And so Steve Carlston, again, small world, my mentor, was friends with the general manager in San Diego and said, look at the tape, just look at it. And he said, okay. And he looked at it and he said to his news director, look at the tape. They said, we never hire anybody that age. They said, just look at it. And they looked at it and they said, all right, let's try you out, but you don't have any live experience and you've never done live, a live shot before and all this.
Hmm.
And so my first live shot was supposed to be in studio. So there would be a prompter and it would all be scripted. And it was the day that Barack Obama selected Joe Biden to be his vice presidential choice. And it
Uh-oh.
happened 45 seconds before we went to air. So I had to throw out the entire script and do it completely off the top of my head and redo the whole piece, and it was like trial by fire. But I had hosted a political show in college and I got through it and it was fine. And they were keeping me though as a per diem. And so I would drive from Agora Hills to San Diego and sleep in the Motel 6. And there's some shady stuff was happening there. And I went with Conan Nolan because I had already said I was going to do this to help Conan Nolan, to help Steve Handelsman at the Republican National Convention in Minnesota when Sarah Palin was selected. And while I was helping them as like a runner, I would bring my own little camera and I would take videos on the convention floor and find delegates from San Diego and find California officials and all this and stay up late. And Conan let me stay in his hotel room because they didn't give me a hotel room. And I would edit pieces and then send it back to my San Diego station like they had a reporter there. And when I got back after doing that with all these very, very high profile people, I had a contract on my desk on Monday. And then I was lucky that, both weekend anchors that they had there suddenly and unexpectedly left the station at the same time 2 weeks after I started. So then they put me in the weekends and I ended up being a weekend morning anchor at 21, which was crazy.
That is really crazy. How long did you stay there before you came back up here?
2 years. So I contract. And then my old professor from USC, again, it's all like who you know,
Man.
said to ABC7, where she had been a producer, just look at his stuff. I know he's young, but look at it, try it. And they hired me, and I was 12 years younger than the next youngest reporter. And so that was challenging because a lot of people when I started didn't necessarily think I deserved to be there. And yeah, you had to work your way in and try to keep your head down and do what
Yeah,
you
but
could.
when you're boy wonder, you do deserve to be there. I mean, you were clearly different than most young people who really needed to go get their feet wet in a very tiny little market. You were doing that in your backyard and on vacation with your sister, and
Right.
then being silly. And clearly in college you had a lot of great opportunities, but you saw an opportunity too, Elex, which I think is important for people to know. You need to keep your eyes open, and when you see an opportunity, even if it's like the size of a little hole in a needle, you got to go for it, right?
Right. And then sort of make your own opportunities, right? And find a way to make yourself where they have no choice but to take you, right? So like at ABC7, where I started there, at first they had a political reporter who was older and sort of towards the end and on his way out. But I really liked that, and I liked doing that sort of stuff. And so, but they were sort of not really inclined to necessarily give me that space. But
Hmm.
then I started working the phones and booking stuff that they couldn't say no to. So I booked an interview with Hillary Clinton. I booked an interview with Donald Trump. I booked an interview with Bernie Sanders. I booked an interview with Ted Cruz. And I booked it, not the assignment desk, not somebody else. So they couldn't give it to Mark Brown or David Ono because it was mine. And so then they had to say, I mean, if I'm like, I got an exclusive with Hillary Clinton, they have to give you a camera and they have and so I started doing that enough that then when it came time to send a crew to the conventions or send a crew to election night, I became the guy because I was delivering more content than even the older person that was there.
I loved, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but that's okay. I loved how Hillary Clinton walked out of the door because I saw that video and she's like, "Oh, hi, Alex." I'm thinking it's like everybody knew you. I believe that you scored an interview with Trump at that time, with Hillary at that
Mhm.
time, with Bernie at that time. Um, and that's all your hustle, right? That's all your
Right.
hustle. Talk about that moment.
Well, the Hillary thing with the name was a little much. I mean, it was interesting how all three of those people were so different. So Hillary Clinton was known for studying and studying you. So first, before they would
Mm,
do the TV interview with me, I did a phone interview with her, which is like not that helpful when you're on TV.
right.
And so, you pick up the phone, it's like, "Hi, Alex, it's Hillary Clinton." I'm like, "What?" Like it's like what? And for me, I was young then, and that's like I grew up watching the Clintons. It was wild. And so when she did the interview with me, she knew where I went, like you, apparently. She knew like where I went to school. She knew who I knew. She knew who we knew in common. She knew, my background. She knew all these different things. She knew how to pronounce my name correctly, right? And she kept saying my name over and over again and tried to make things about me. And it was like a very shrewd politician way of going about it. Bernie Sanders made it all about, the issues that he cares about and didn't really focus on me at all. And didn't care how we interviewed him at Jimmy Kimmel Live, and he just came in ruffled and kind of a mess and did his thing and didn't smell great and like it was just like it was like whatever. He's like, and he does his thing and moves on. And then Donald Trump, we interviewed him at Jimmy Kimmel Live. the next night, and Donald Trump only cared about Donald Trump, right? So he comes in and even though he had just been on TV, he goes back into the makeup room for more makeup. When he comes in to do the interview with us, he sees the lighting, but tells them to switch the lighting, wants to check the way he looks on the monitor to make sure that it's okay. He gets photo approval from Jimmy Kimmel Live, where he signs off on which pictures he thinks he looks good on and which pictures he doesn't look good on. He goes through the interview, and like at the end of it, he's like, good, you're good. And like they call ABC to say that I'm good and that he would do more stuff with me.
Wow.
But it was like it was like but it was like, as long as you made it about him. So Hillary tried to make it about you. Bernie made it about the issues, and Donald Trump made it about Donald Trump.
What a learning experience for you, though, because you're a people guy and you read people very well and you take that into the next level. That's really, really something. And what a great education without even quite realizing it's happening. Look what you absorbed there, right?
Yeah, that was wild. And that was all in the course of like 4 days. Was all that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Do you call home when these things happen? Because I know you're quite close to your mom, if you want to talk about that a little bit. Then we're going to get into Fox 11 and The Issue Is, which is hands down one of the best political shows ever out there. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I'll get into it in a minute. But Mom, I know you're very close to Mom. She makes cookies every time you're in the studio. And no matter where you're going next, whether it's another station or
I don't know we're going to do the cookies every day, but it was the good thing of the cookies was once a week when we had guests in studio. So it wasn't always even every week. It's a lot of work. But my mom is great. We've been, very, very, very close, and she's been, my biggest supporter. And of course, after that experience, I immediately call my mom. I mean, who wouldn't on all that stuff? And that was a crazy time. That was also a week that we were all together sort of leading this campaign for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. They do this Man and Woman of the Year fundraising campaign, and it was the last week before the deadline. So my mom was helping to lead that, and we had this big gala the next night after that. So there was a lot going. That's usually the way it is for me.
That's usually the way it is for you. And I don't think do you ever take a day off? Did you ever then? Do you ever now? I guess today's your day off.
Today's my day off, and I'm spending it with you.
Oh, don't I love to hear that. Thank you so much. I'm really quite honored. You probably don't have much time off. So very soon, I know we're going to be finding you somewhere. So enjoy your time while you can. When you landed at Fox 11, and how did you even start up with The Issue Is? It is one of the most unique shows I've ever seen. I love when you have Gloria Allred on. I know you have the highest respect for her.
You do.
She was your last guest as well, and you were dancing it up in the studio. You've had my husband on quite a few times. You always leave with, and me, you always leave with everyone with smiling, with music, with joy, with respect. I love that about you and your show. How did The Issue Is come to be?
And our closing comment on the last episode was about smiles and joy and the importance of that. And I wanted that to be the sort of last note of the show. How did it come to be? It was not something that I actually pursued. I went to Fox 11 with the expectation of being a morning anchor there. There was some weird stuff that happened at the beginning, so I took a bit for me to get there. But they came to me and said, we want to launch this show on Friday nights. We've been doing a lot of different things in this Friday night at 10:30 time slot, which was the worst time slot of the week. And it was so bad as a time slot that they wanted to take it out of the ratings book for the regular news. Because they didn't want, that back half did so poorly that they wanted it to be labeled something else. So it was a year for the congressional midterms, 2018. There was a governor's race. So they thought, well, this could be a good parking spot for campaign ads, and maybe we'll make some money with that. And, we'll see, and they had 5 or 6 different shows in probably 5 years in that time slot. None of them had worked. And so they said, all right, kid, you try it. And the Jack Abernathy, the president of the network, just said to me, I said, what do you want me to do? He said, do something interesting. And that was it. And that was the only note they ever gave me. They never said make it conservative, make it liberal. They never said this is what it should look like. It was just do something interesting. So I came up with the name The Issue Is, in part inspired by Tim Russert.
Mm.
used to start his shows every Sunday as "Our Issues This Sunday" was the first line of Meet the Press, and he was my
Right.
hero and role model. And so I said, I can't name it Meet the Press, so why not call it The Issue Is? And I like that The Issue Is did not have politics in it, because I like politics a lot, obviously. I'm passionate about it, but I like other stuff too. I mean, I
Yeah.
like community stories. I like entertainment. I like sports. I like other stuff. And I didn't want the issue to always just be, LA. At the time, it started just as an LA show. And then they liked it and it was doing something special. And so they said, let's try this in San Francisco as well, which was easy because it was a Fox station. And then they said, okay, this is working. So let's try this statewide. So they syndicated it in every market in the state in 2020, right at the beginning of 2020. And then, of course, COVID happened. And then it
Ooh.
really became easier to, frankly, make it a statewide show because then Zoom became a thing.
Yeah.
And so instead of just who can we get in the studio in LA, it became we can get somebody in Oakland and in Sacramento and in San Diego and in Fresno and all the rest of it because it became a different kind of show.
Yeah. Your first guest.
Our first guest was Gavin Newsom, and Adam Schiff was our second guest. Although we taped Adam Schiff first, so he likes to say he was the first guest. So both of them
Yeah.
technically were the first guest. We had a panel that week with Dan Schnur, my old professor, Reva Martin, and Joel Pollack from Breitbart. And the second week, I mean, we started off very strong. The second week we had John Lewis, the civil rights icon,
Yeah.
and Karen Bass at the Community Coalition. She was congressperson then. And the third week we had Gloria Allred and her daughter Lisa Bloom in a very rare joint interview from the two of them. And
Yeah.
that's when she started dancing and never stopped.
Yeah, and that probably gave you an idea. It's like we got to really incorporate music into this thing. I love the way you end your show because it changes, right? You've got music, you ask them a fun question, and you do always end it, no matter what happened. There could be some sparring going on. People are smiling and people feel good about themselves. I think that's the way it's supposed to be. Why do
Yeah.
you want people to leave feeling angry at who they were talking
Well,
to?
there's
Um,
I think part of the sort of joy and opportunity of the show. I mean, the bosses really gave us a lot of freedom, a lot. I mean, they never even asked me who was going to be on the show. I mean, it was like, and they also didn't put ratings pressure on us at all. So I just did the show that I thought was good and fun and important. And I didn't have all of that pressure. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if something like that can work in the more competitive place of cable news with the pressure there, or some of these other spaces where they put a lot more ratings pressure. Because if you're just doing something based off of what's going to immediately get me the highest rating because this is what's proven to be true, it's a bunch of people screaming at each other, right? It's not necessarily thoughtful. It's not necessarily joyous. It's not necessarily nuanced. It's you pick the most hot button issue that's trending that week. You get two people that have big personalities and let them fight. And that's not, we did that sometimes, but most of the time we didn't. And even when we did that, we would still have moments of bringing them together.
yeah.
It was a more thoughtful, more joyous show, in part because I don't think we had all of that pressure. And can that survive outside that ecosystem? I don't know. I hope so. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
But it was sort of a special space that I really do appreciate.
Yeah. Um, the Rolodex you have, if people even know what a Rolodex is anymore, it's got to all be on your phone
Oh,
because,
yes,
good
I
heavens,
don't have a Rolodex.
I know I'm being silly, but everything from Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I know you've become quite friendly with, right?
Yeah,
I mean, good heavens, he even invited you to the gym, and worked you out. I love that episode. It was hysterical. That must
yeah.
have been fun, right?
Oh,
Like,
that was one of the best. That was a yeah, but all that stuff took time, right? So the thing about the issue is it because it was a different kind of show that nobody else was doing and wasn't really comparable with anything. People that hadn't seen it, especially people from other parts of the country, didn't get it, right? You didn't
hmm,
get it. I mean, if you just told them we're doing a local, Friday night 10:30 show, they would think that it was, not as interesting or not as beneficial for them as what it was. So for many people, It took me years of trying to get them. Arnold Schwarzenegger took me 3 years of
Oh,
reaching
wow.
out to his guy every 2 weeks. Jerry Brown took me 3.5 years. Nancy Pelosi took me 6 years.
Wow.
And most of the time, once they did it, they loved it, and then they'd come back and they'd tell other people to do it.
Yeah.
But they had to do it. They had to see it. They had to experience it before they would get there. So early on, we didn't. The show was more of a panel show when it first started off,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was before COVID, and everybody was in the studio, and it was a different feeling. And then towards the end, it became more of these big newsmaker shows. But that's because we had done it, and then also some of that, like give like we did a show with George Clooney. So then you send that to other actors, publicists, and you say, George Clooney's done the show. It gives you some credibility that I can do this. But the main way that most people watch that show, and the reason that I think it worked is that I put so much time and effort into social media.
Yeah.
And so people, even if they weren't watching that show at that horrible time slot, and it was even worse time slots in the other cities, they would see the tweet or see the Instagram post or see it. And if you collaborate with somebody or the other, you give them good content that they would want to share. That's part of, having them leave in a good mindset. If they leave in a good mindset, they're going to want to share out the content. And then that's good for you in getting your content in front of other eyeballs, which not only includes viewers, but includes other politicians. It includes
Hmm.
other staffers, communications directors, and they see what you can do because they're all following each other, and then it has a snowball effect.
Did you ever have a moment where it's like, I can't believe he or she just said that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, we had. I mean, I'm nothing like when you say that, I got to think more intensely about what, But there were things that were surprising all the time. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
like I can't believe that kind of happened. Really?
right. I didn't think they were
Um,
going to go there. Yeah. I mean, even
yeah,
in our last interview, I mean, and sometimes it was stuff that you didn't expect. Like we were interviewing Gavin Newsom, and I asked him how he had changed over the 7.5 years. And he said that the recall changed his perspective when he realized that
yeah.
everything is national and not all politics isn't local. And I'd never heard him say that. Maybe he had. I just hadn't heard him say that. He certainly hadn't said that to me. And it makes sense if you think about it, because now everything he does is national and he cares so much about the national shows and the digital influencers. And obviously, some of that's tied to him running for president. But you really can't a demarcation in his career, how he changed his approach after that, which was interesting. I wasn't expecting him to say that.
It's interesting. You were saying you were the pool reporter when Trump was in town during his first administration, but also you were invited to go to China with Governor Gavin Newsom. That was a moment. And I know you didn't air this on your last show, but a lot of us remember the moment that he was playing basketball with the young child from China, and we're like, oh my goodness. And I'm sure you thought at a moment, because you were there obviously in real time, gosh, do I use that or not? And you did. You showed him stumbling in more ways than one. So I thought, you really showed a real side to him as well. I thought that was how did you manage to score that, to travel to China with him?
Well, credit to the station. They offered it not just to me. They did offer it to other people, but our station said yes. And my
Mm,
boss, Steve Carlston, said, we should do this. This is going to be worth it. And so, but the deal was that Fox 11 didn't want to send a photographer because of the expense.
yeah.
And actually, Newsom's team didn't want me to send a photographer because of the gear. China, you had to check all this stuff. We were moving really fast. I mean, thing after thing. We were part of this police motorcade, and it was so I shot the
Wow.
entire week on my iPhone, which I'd never done before, including some high-profile interviews. And it worked well for the moving around. Some of the interview stuff, not quite as much. I screwed up some aspects of it, but I actually looking back on it, it probably was more beneficial to be able to do it that way because of the intensity and pace of that trip.
I'm surprised they never brought or tried to bring the issue is on the national stage, because what you do I
So am
believe would
I. If they
be.
would have, maybe I'd still be there.
Yeah, but I mean,
So,
don't you think, because what you do is
well,
so
I
in
didn't, it wasn't that I didn't pitch it. They don't, yeah.
how they
Yeah.
didn't bite
Yeah.
at that one, I don't
Yeah.
understand.
I
But
tried
and I don't get it,
multiple
because
times.
we need a show like this nationally. We really do. To present all the issues on the national stage. And so I hope someday that we see you doing something like that, because it's necessary, because you also show people's personalities, and people like to see a personality behind the figure, right?
Yeah, I
They
mean,
really do.
one of the best things, which became a signature thing that we started week one, and I give Stephen Brown from Fox syndication credit for coming up with this idea. We thought, let's play some games. Like, the great thing is, because we were doing it on Friday night and not Sunday morning, like most other
Right.
political shows, we tried to make it like a Friday night party.
Yeah.
So we played music. We had the lights set like you were at a club. We had
Yeah.
blues, and we had different looks that made it feel that way. And we had games, like you would, like almost like drinking games, right? That I didn't really think of it that way, but it was like, you at a party you would play games sometimes. And so we did this segment called Personal Issues, which became a signature piece of the show. And it was 30 seconds, so it forced people to like act quickly. And we asked them their cultural favorites. And those were often the best part of the whole interview. It was
Yeah.
stuff that nobody else had asked them about. It was moments where you could see people as human beings. You saw them ask questions in that they actually had to think, that they didn't know were coming, that they hadn't pre-scripted an answer to. And people could connect to that, even if they weren't that into politics, or even if they're a Republican, they could say, "Oh, I like Bruce Springsteen too," or "Yeah, at least we both
That's
love the
right.
Dodgers." And it was a barrier breaker for some of this stuff. So I would love to continue a version of that wherever I go.
Yeah, that'd be great. I often wonder, because you see Mitch McConnell on the show, back when, when you were doing, especially in the beginning, of him getting up to dance. I often wonder, like, you know what I mean?
Oh, no. Mitch McConnell was never on our show
I
dancing.
know, but wouldn't that have been something? Like,
Yes.
sometimes I imagine,
We did have
imagine,
we
go
did
ahead.
have Matt Friend, the impressionist, doing Mitch McConnell
Yes.
dancing.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said that, because I think
Yeah,
he started it with Mitch McConnell with his
yeah,
impression, and then you ran a clip of him doing an impression of Donald Trump. What a great
yeah.
impressionist. He's really quite
He
amazing.
is. He's amazing, and we put him on the show. I mean, one other thing that I'm proud of the show is sort of lifting people up at the beginning, but you see something really special. So Matt Friend is somebody I met on this Clubhouse, if people remember that app during the
Yeah, remember
pandemic.
that during
Yeah,
COVID? It's like, oh,
yeah.
are you on Clubhouse? It's like,
And so
okay, yeah,
I ended up in the fake Howard Stern show with Matt Friend as the host and talking to him. And I put him on my show the very next week. I booked it in real time, which I never did. And he was amazing. He was this young kid, and not that many people had heard of him. And he hadn't done a bunch of TV, and it was a big deal for him. And he did an Anthony Fauci impression. This was in the middle of COVID. And then Anthony Fauci was on the show the next week. And so I showed it to him, and that was like a cool thing. And then Friend just blew up. I mean, he's a huge star now. And not only did he do the fake Howard Stern had him on to do Howard Stern on Howard Stern. But there were others too. My pal Brian Tyler Cohen, who is one of the biggest stars on YouTube. I put him on TV for the first time ever. The Midas Touch guys, who now have the #1 podcast many weeks. One of the first TV interviews they ever did was with us. I like that concept of sort of getting somebody on the way up, and then they remember you too, because people remember the people that were there for them when they started.
Is this all natural and organic for you? Because everything you do comes full circle in such a decent way, in such an impactful way. People are appreciative, or is that just the way? That's just your instinct on how to do the work you do?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's instinct, and I
Yeah,
think of it kind of strategically, right?
yeah,
How are we going to build in? And sometimes you do interviews or you put people on, or I had the 6 o'clock show too, where we do live guest segments every day.
right.
And I viewed that a little bit more like training wheels for the issue is, but it gives you a chance. Sometimes you do an interview that isn't necessarily even for the audience or even for that person. It's about building a relationship and investing in that person so that you can get the next interview down the road. I mean, there's a lot of that. I mean, it's a long game, you know. And you
It
got to
is a long game. Yeah.
constantly in terms of building and building so that when it really matters. I mean, for me, I really felt like, okay, this is the benefit of all of this during the fires when I
Oh,
was on for, 12, 14 hours at a time. And because I have the Rolodex, or at least my cell phone full of
yeah.
all these numbers, I was texting with a lot of these officials in real time, and they would say to me, and at that point, I was on and just looking to fill time. I'm like, "Do you want to call in?" So
Yeah.
we had this moment with Rick Caruso that went mega viral, mega viral,
Yeah.
where he was upset about what was being said. He said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "I'm on the air. If you want to talk to me on the air, it'd be great." And he's just texting me, watching the programming, and then he goes off on bass and the water and all the rest of this stuff. And it became the first time that anybody had really done that criticism. And then that gets posted online, and Elon Musk tweets about it, and Donald Trump talks about it at the White House, and Joe Biden has to respond to it, and all this stuff. It's sort of setting the debate because Rick Caruso knows me, he was watching, and that we're in touch, and we had Alex Padilla call in, we had different members of the Newsom team call in. We when Newsom did one interview that week, in the field with a local person, he did it with me. It was all of those things, which I think in that moment of when Karen Bass did her first interview after the fire, she did it with me. All those relationships, when it really mattered, when people were really tuned in, when people really needed information, that's when the years of relationships really paid off for the
You
viewer.
also, sorry, you also give people the space to talk. You do not really, your poker face in a good way, right? You ask tough questions. You do. You will follow up with a tough question, but it's never a gotcha question. It's more like the kind of question I would want answered at home. It's like, hey, wait a minute. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, you ask a logical question to what they're saying, but always with respect. I do like that. That's something that's just missing. And no matter which side, whoever you're interviewing on which side, you do manage to do that, which is why they come back, which is why they're texting you in the middle of a newscast,
Right.
which I've done many times. And I'm like, my husband Johnny's like, he's on the air. I'm like, it doesn't matter. He answers anyway. It's
Yeah,
like, it's
actually,
really
the,
quite amazing.
the only,
Go ahead.
the only time all day that I'm not moving anywhere is when I'm, so the best time to text me is actually when I'm on the air. It's when the rest of the time I'm running. It's like the only time I'm stationary is then. Yeah, I think that as Conan Nolan taught me years ago, as we already mentioned, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you could go about it and you could get your gotcha moment. I mean, people are like, why don't you call Gavin Newsom a failure? And it's like, okay, I could call him a failure and just say, you're an asshole or whatever they want me to say. And then I never talk to him again. And is that better for my viewers? Is it better for the viewers that I get that one moment for 6 seconds and then we never hear from him again? We have no access. We don't get anybody information. Is it better for our
No,
viewers that Gavin Newsom does an interview in the fires with somebody else instead of with our station? Is that better for
no.
our viewers? I mean, ultimately, if you're trying to get information, which is what the point of this is, not just moments, but information, isn't it better to have a ongoing dialogue with people? Look, most of these politicians know the game. I mean, they know they're going to get tough
Yeah,
questions. That's part of the game, and they prepare for them. They have whole teams that get them ready for this. They're not random people you meet on the street that don't have TV training. I
yeah.
think that they respect and appreciate if you do it in a fair way, and if you a fair question that people are interested in, and don't do things. And a lot of the times, I would think about, okay, what are they actually responsible for? What's in their
Yes.
purview? Because sometimes people will blame X politician for something that's not happening in their city or not even happening in their state or try to and it's like, let's focus on, what they do. And there's usually enough to criticize in that space versus having to, sort of make something up or drag them into something that they're really not involved in.
And also, I've heard you say what they can do to make your life better, because
Right.
people have forgotten that along the way. It's about, knocking them down. But there is something that they're elected for a reason, whether you like the person there or not. They're there to try and do something, to try and improve our lives. Now, many are not, and they need to be held accountable for that.
Public
But
service is about serving the public.
right, right, which you do quite well, and you're not even in politics.
It's a
Incredible.
version of it.
Okay, real quick, I'm just a version of it for sure. What's your favorite band or whatever? I got to like give a little back to you, right? I have
Oh,
to end the
yeah.
show with something a little
Well, at
fun.
the end of, I've always said Bruce Springsteen for many years, but on the end of the issue is I said, I said Michael Jackson, which is probably more of a true answer, but I like them both.
Oh, wow. Were you dancing to his music? I did. I'd
Yes.
have it
Yeah.
blasting in the house. My parents would come home and say, "What is going on here?" I'm like, "I'm just dancing." So you
Yeah.
love Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a great sock collection,
I do. Try to
right?
match the socks with my tie every day. Yes.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay. What else do we just not know about Alex that you can share that you do on your
Uh,
off time? I know you love the beach. You're a beach guy.
I love the beach. Elex comes from my great grandmother Ethel. That's where the E comes from, which a lot of people are curious about that. I'm 6'5". Some people don't realize that until they see me in person, and they're usually surprised about that. I don't know. I'm a SoCal kid.
Yeah, SoCal kid. And something a lot of people don't realize with all the experience and all you've done in your last newscast with Christine Devine and Marla Tejas, right? You were
Hmm.
all kind of holding hands, and you said you're the best. I believe you said something like the big sisters to have or that I've ever had. And I thought to myself, gosh, I forgot. You're a young guy. You're still in your 30s. I mean, it's really quite amazing all you've done.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you're still a guy in his 30s. You had a great relationship with the two of them, didn't you?
Yeah, a lot of love for both of them. I mean, different relationships with each of them, but they both have been really supportive and really great. And I think that love was obvious for people on that final day. It was hard. I mean, it's hard for me the thought of not doing that again. And I love them and I love that show. And walking
Yeah.
away from that is really hard for me. And it's
Yeah, but
crazy to think of it. Yeah.
sorry. You're walking into something else. Can you tell us anything, any little tidbit, whatever that may be?
Well, it is in LA, and it is news related, and it's politics related, and I'm still going to be interested and focused on the California political issues. So they can't get rid of me quite yet.
So you're not going to be a lobbyist. You're not going to go work on any political campaign.
No.
It's likely we'll see your face most nights, right? Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And you'll let us know when you can announce that, or we don't need to. You don't need to let us know. You will on social media. I mean, I'm
Yes.
going to be
Yeah.
scrolling every day. How are you going to spend the next so many weeks or months until you start this new venture?
I don't know. Hopefully go away somewhere. The next few days, stuff set up for the new job and sort of take it easy, and then hopefully, and kind of mourn what was, and then get out of here.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I hope you
We'll
didn't
see
mean
with that.
here, but no,
No,
thank you
no,
very
no.
much.
But
I
I
mean,
mean, get out of,
no, I
and
got you.
take some time, and I'll spend some time with my family, and spend some time by myself, and spend some time at the beach, and work out, and sleep, and all those things.
Yeah, when you said get out of here, I knew what you meant. You meant in your
Yeah,
head, like,
yeah,
look at all those books behind you too. I'm going to
yeah,
guess you read each and every one of them as well.
yeah. Not every one of them, but I am going to
No,
read a few of them during this time. Yeah,
Alex, thank
I
you
kind
so
of I kind
much.
of want to
Go ahead.
read the Barbara Walters book for inspiration. I think that might be an interesting time to do that.
Did you watch her documentary?
I did. Yeah,
What a hustler. So much she did that I didn't realize, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because, I knew her better in her much later career, as you certainly did. And I just didn't realize that'd be a great book to read.
yeah. It feels like it's
Um,
good timing for that.
Really good timing for that. So,
Yeah.
Alex, thank you more than you know for coming on our show,
This
being
was
the
so fun.
first. Yeah, it was actually a lot of fun being the first interview you did after Friday night. So, like I said, you couldn't stay away for too long. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Thank you. And thank you for all the research. And I'm leaving feeling good about this. So thank you.
yeah. And is there anything else you want to tell my viewers, please?
If it'd be great if you I've still got all my social media. So youtube.com/Elex Michaelson. If you missed the last show, you can watch it there and watch past content. Connect with me on Instagram at Elex Michaelson, on X, Elex_Michaelson. It'd be great to hear from you.
Yeah. And remember, that's Alex with an E.
Hmm.
My husband, I'm always like, it's not Alex, it's Alex. And he goes,
Yes.
I know, I keep pronouncing it wrong. So it's Alex with an E.
Yes.
Elex Michaelson, one of the finest journalists, newscasters, and interviewers, I think, of a generation, just so unique. And I hope that there's other students out there who are going to follow in your footsteps. It's, in my opinion, it's the only way to do solid journalism. So wherever you land, we're really looking forward to watching you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, Deborah. Lots of
yeah,
love to you.
Lots of love to you and everybody. Thank you for joining us today on Deborah Kobylt Live. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, X, and also then we post little promos from our show on Instagram. And also we are an audio podcast on iHeart, Apple, and just anywhere else that you get your audio and video podcast. Just look us up, Deborah Kobylt Live with Elex Michaelson. Tell your friends as well, and look up Alex's social media profiles to find out where he's going next. So again, thank you again, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.